Well, welcome. I'm Professor Reisner, and I was just going to start off today, and hopefully we'll be joined by two of our current students, Taylor, who's a junior, and then Ryan is actually a senior. So hopefully they'll join us. They're coming from something else. So I was just going to give you a quick overview of things, and then let Dr. Koontz talk a little bit about kind of the ecological side of our curriculum, and then let Dr. Lashley talk about kind of the human dimension side. And then hopefully we'll hear briefly from the two students on their perspective. So I'm Professor Reisner. I've been at Augustana since about 2013. And if you have a question, just jump in and I'll try to watch the screens all at once. So, but we'll have plenty of time for question and answer. So I kind of have three hats here at Augustana. The first one is I was the first full-time environmental studies faculty hired at Augustana in 2013. The second hat I wear is I co-chair the program along with Dr. Koontz. And then the third hat I wear is I direct our Upper Mississippi Center for Sustainable Communities. And in a nutshell, what that does is it tries to generate experiential learning opportunities, so internships, research opportunities, project-based learning for classes. We try to generate those, and they're usually focused on helping one of our local community partners, whether it's a nonprofit or a city, try to understand and try to start solving a sustainability challenge that they're facing. In terms of the environmental studies program, I thought I'd just highlight 5 areas where I think it's relatively unique among some of our peer schools that you might be considering, and kind of why I see Augustana kind of standing apart in terms of their curriculum. The first one that I think sometimes maybe not intuitive when you're coming out of high school is it's built around an integrated core group of courses. And the courses are really designed to build on one another and to make sure at the end of it that you really have an ability to use a kind of an integrated interdisciplinary approach, and that you're taking a systems approach to some of these problems and really trying to understand both the ecological and the human dimensions. I would contrast that with some of the other programs you might look at where it looks more like a smorgasbord of courses that you pick from. And oftentimes, that's okay in terms of a broad perspective of the issues, but if they're not integrated together, it can be hard to draw those connections between some of the individual components. So we've done a really nice job of trying to build an integrated sequence of courses. At the same time, you also have the flexibility to take 4 courses that are electives. And that's where you can really build up an area of concentration or an interest you have. So that's, I think, one thing that really stands out from our curriculum. The second part of it that I think is really unique and kind of fun and cutting edge is we dedicate 2 of those core courses, so 2 full-length semester courses to the Senior Inquiry Capstone Experience. And in that experience, we tackle a real-world project with a community partner. Right now and for the foreseeable future, we're focused on kind of assessing some watersheds with one of our local community partners that flow through both rural agricultural landscapes and urban landscapes. The final piece I think is interesting about our curriculum is even from the start, it's got these hands-on learning experiences with, the 100-level class has a lab dedicated to it. And, all of them have field-based components or role-playing, real-world simulations, and then culminating with that project we do in the capstone experience. Kind of related to what I've already said, I think it strikes a nice balance. Dr. Lashley is one of our newest professors, and we really have been deliberate in making a home for both those of you that might think I'm an environmental scientist and those that might think I'm in environmental studies. I'm more the human dimension side. So we really tried to carve out a role for both of those interests in our curriculum. And the last part, I don't think it's unique to just environmental studies, but Augustana has some awesome opportunities to engage in faculty mentored research, regardless of what your interests are, where you get to do some research hands-on, often one-on-one with faculty, and that's just an amazing learning experience. And it can probably be done remotely, but those are in a nutshell. I just wanted to give you a quick overview. If you have questions, if you want to hold off, I'll let Dr. Lashley go next, and then Dr. Koontz, and we can go from there. So Sarah, it's all yours.
Sure, thanks. So as Dr. Reisner mentioned, I focus on the social dimensions of environmental issues. And so for us, what that really means is thinking about the ways in which humans both affect our ecosystem and our ecosystem services, and the ways in which our ecosystem services in turn influence human well-being. And so that really means that we need to be attuned to what are the ways in which humans are driving some of our environmental problems. And so that might mean investigating things like, how do we define environment? How do we economically value ecosystem services? How does our culture, how do our values, our ethics, how do those influence how we engage with our environment, and also the ways in which we engage in conflict with one another around these issues? Of course, it also means, how do we respond to these issues and think about social movements and organizing, think about politics, power, policy making. And so it's really kind of thinking about the role that humans play, our agency, and again, both creating and responding to our environmental problems. As Dr. Reisner mentioned, I think what's really great about the Augustana curriculum is that really from the 100, the 101 level courses, all the way through the capstone, you as students are really engaged in the hands-on work of environmental issues. So for example, in Environmental Studies 101, this past January, we partnered with Dr. Reisner in a couple of local cities to kind of help them think through, okay, they are interested in right-of-way trees. So how can we look at some of the models that other cities use and think about how could we transfer some of those ideas to this particular city? So it was really about working in partnership and working with an authentic audience, such that you're not just writing papers or taking exams for me, but you're actually doing the work for a stakeholder, for a city, for someone who really has a vested interest in the outcomes of your work. And I think that's pretty amazing to be able to do it, again, not just the upper level, but all throughout the curriculum. As Dr. Reisner mentioned, there are opportunities to be engaged in research. My own research, I'm an environmental sociologist, and my particular interests are in environmental justice and in conflict management. And so I actually have a student who is working remotely with me right now, who's helping me to put together a case history or a case analysis of parties who have historically very much been in conflict with one another, but who came together to collaboratively create a park in a really hard-hit part of Chicago. And so, this is a student, he's not a senior student, he's actually a first year as well. And so I think we work really hard to get research experiences for students at all different levels and different time periods within their Augustana career. So I think at this point, I'll stop here. There's a lot to say, but I'll stop here and turn it over to Dr. Koontz. And then as Dr. Reisner mentioned, we can follow up with lots of different questions after.
Yeah, so I guess first of all, happy Earth Day. I think it's kind of awesome that we're doing environmental studies sessions on Earth Day. I'd love to say we actually planned that, but we actually honestly didn't, but it's kind of awesome anyway. Unlike Dr. Reisner and Dr. Lashley, I'm actually in the biology department, and I just happen to co-chair environmental studies, and I teach some of the electives that are part of the environmental studies curriculum. That is one of the strengths, I think I already mentioned, is the fact that you do get to choose basically 4 upper level electives, and actually there's some lower level electives as well, but you basically work with your advisor to kind of design the tailor the environmental studies curriculum to what your ultimate interests are. So if you are more leaning towards the sciences, you can take courses in biology and chemistry and geology and geography and actually build a toolkit to make yourself super marketable for grad programs or various types of careers. Or if you're more interested in the social science human dimension area, you can take sociology, anthropology, geography, and English and a few other courses in other departments that then tailor it to how you want to design your Augustana experience. So I think the power of our curriculum really is the fact that it is an environmental studies department, and that we really do, as both Dr. Lashley and Dr. Reisner have said, we really integrate and balance both the natural sciences and the social sciences. So, and part of that natural science education is that you do get some experience in kind of broad ecological concepts right away in the Environmental Studies 100 course, which is our natural science end of the introductory sequence. You're learning about the different ecosystem services. When you think about when you go outside, what is the natural world? What are the roles that the organisms are playing in the natural world? How do humans co-opt some of those things? How do we influence those things? And then how do we then ultimately try to work with nature so we can abuse it a little less? So we do a lot of basic kind of ecology things. A lot of it right now is focused on water resources. If you're not familiar with the Quad Cities, we are right on the Mississippi River. We have a very hilly topography with lots of ravines cutting through Rock Island, Moline, and also on the Iowa side in Bettendorf and Davenport. And so really trying to understand how water moves through the system and the role that urbanization has played on the waterways is really key. So understanding just basic water chemistry, nutrient cycling, the rules of agriculture, the rules of urbanization, the rules of industry, and how that connects to the biological world kind of in the largest sense. So we have faculty like me who I'm technically a botanist and I'm a conservation biologist. So a lot of the work that I do with the ENVR students is teaching them basic plant ID, tree ID. We're working on a program teaching students on floristic quality assessments. We have an ecology faculty member who does a lot of water quality work with them. We have an entomologist who is doing a lot of macroinvertebrate work and insect inventorying with students. So we do a lot of basic biological inventorying and assessment, a lot of ecological inventorying and assessment, and we're training students with these hands-on experiences. The other course that all majors and minors take is Geographic Information Systems, or GIS as you probably know it. And that is an incredible opportunity for our students to actually take, all students have to take one GIS course, but there are opportunities to do even more with GIS, and that is a huge tool for your tool belts. Prior to coming to Augustana, I worked for the Natural History Survey down in Champaign, Illinois. We had our own GIS department, which was awesome because I could walk into the department and say, I need this information. They would generate the maps, put the layers on it, and that was what I needed to then go to my various stakeholders to help them make decisions on natural resource inventorying. And those jobs are hugely important and very marketable. And so our graduates actually come out the door with this skill set in hand, which this bridges both the natural science and the social science angle. So it's a really awesome experience for those students. And I think at this point, probably we'll just turn it over to Q&A for those of you that want us to give feedback, and hopefully Ryan and Taylor will be joining us soon.
So what kind of careers can I get with a degree in environmental science from Augustana?
Yeah, so I was jotting down kind of the latest percentages. So I 20 to 30% of our students will go right into a graduate school in their area of specialty. I mean, the neat thing about Augustana, I was doing all the math, and I can't think of a single student that not only got into grad school, but most of them are on teaching or research assistantships. So they're getting a tuition waiver. So I know that's a long time to think about, but 4 years from now, if you go to graduate school, then you go to grad school and you get a modest stipend. I'll leave it at that. It's enough to live on. but you can potentially go to graduate school and not go into debt to do it. I would say for those of the students of the 70% that go straight into the workforce, certainly 30 or 40% of them will end up working for a state or a county or a city or a federal agency. So they'll go into one of the resource management or environmental protection or fish and wildlife type of agencies. Right now, most of them, there's a lot more jobs at the state level than there are at the federal level. So they'll end up there, especially the federal jobs, if you're willing to move out of the region, there's a lot of jobs on the West Coast. So Oregon, Washington, Idaho, California. And then of the remaining students, we have a smaller percentage, but growing. So 10 to 15% that will end up working for a private company. And often they're doing some type of environmental compliance. So working on Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, making sure the company's in compliance with those laws, or doing kind of Superfund assessments. So assessing hazardous waste sites. And then the last 10, 15% will end up working for what I'll call a local or regional nonprofit. So a conservation or an environmental organization. So that's in a nutshell of where they end up. It's pretty flexible in terms of what your interests are.
Got questions. Cameron wanted to know if we have the accreditation needed to get into grad school for environmental studies and biology. This is my cat Hendrik, who wants to Zoom with us. I'm trying to push him out of the way. But in terms of accreditation, for most of our students, just the Augie degree, a bachelor's degree, is what most of the grad programs they're applying to, they require. We actually don't have a formal accreditation with any environmental governing body that I'm aware of, but Reisner may be able to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, there's no official. Sorry, my phone decided to fly off my desk. So there's no real official accrediting body. I think, graduate schools have gotten really specific in terms of what discipline you're going into, what they're looking for in terms of background. I think generally you're pretty well set. For some of them, there's certain courses. I think the nice thing here is, working with your advisor, if you're thinking of going into graduate school in the hard natural sciences, making sure that your 4 electives are filling in those holes that you might need. Like you probably need a basic ecology course. We do have a soils course. We have an advanced GIS course, versus the flip side of it. If you're going into the human dimensions, I'm guessing sometimes you need a psychology course for some of the programs, or maybe some of the upper level sociology or anthropology courses that we have. So, and a couple of those are kind of social science methods courses. So I would say it's fairly flexible. And once you start and you get into your second and third year, if you're really committed to grad school, then making sure we use those electives to make sure you've got that group of courses that make sense together. So.
And I think a lot of it too, at least my experience with my advisees, is the close connection that our students develop with faculty members, not only just in their classes, but in the case of environmental studies, you are working with faculty out in the field on our community projects, as well as with faculty member research. And so having those close personal collections, that we actually are the ones writing the letters of recommendation, that when you apply to grad school, it really is that packet of, here is my transcript of the courses that I have, here is my personal statement or essay that I've written that I'm explaining why I want to go to this program and what I hope to do with the graduate degree that I would earn from this program. And then we triangulate all that with the faculty member's letter, that then provide yet another line of evidence why you're a rock star and why this program would be stupid to not accept you into it. That's really, I think, the strength of the way of what we do at Augustana in terms of the interactions we have with our students. And even though our major is rapidly growing, we still get to know all of our students really well, and we do talk about them quite a bit when we are getting our coffee in the morning and talking about things that we enjoy with them. And so our letters aren't just like robot kind of impersonal letters. I've gotten multiple comments from graduate and professional schools about how they've really appreciated the kinds of letters that our faculty are able to write.
So what specific graduate schools? When Jason was going, I was trying to list some of the more recent ones. So just the last couple years, what specific graduate schools? Ella is University of Wisconsin, one in a master's, one in a PhD program, University of Missouri, Duke, Dartmouth, Eastern Kentucky, which is a really cool environmental geology school. If you hadn't heard of Eastern Kentucky, I hadn't before then. University Colorado State, University of Oregon, Montana State, and the University of Minnesota. So those are some that come to mind for students just the last couple years. So a really breadth of programs. Some of them really the interdisciplinary programs at the graduate level, from natural sciences to the human dimensions. Our one student at Colorado State and Oregon. I think Oregon, their environmental sociology, and I can't remember Colorado State what specific discipline they ended up going to grad school, but a pretty diverse group of schools. So topics, Sarah, you want to take, so topics you might cover in the environmental studies classes?
Sure. So I will leave the biology piece to Dr. Koontz, but in terms of specific topics, we're going to talk a lot about social organizing. So thinking about how is it that we get people to act in the ways that we want for them to act in regards to the environment. So that's both at kind of large movement scales and that's at individual behavior scales. So for example, for the Environmental Studies 101 class right now, which is the social dimensions of sustainability, students are thinking about a particular environmental behavior change that they would like to see on campus, and then using the concepts and theories from our class to develop a plan to nudge their peers to actually adopt some of those behaviors. So that's kind of one area that we're going to talk a lot about, which is kind of the social and behavioral change piece. Another topic that's near and dear to me is going to be around situations of inequality. So really thinking about the ways in which our environment and who has access to environmental goods, who really bears the cost of environmental hazards, how those environmental goods and hazards are going to be distributed differentially across populations in the United States and globally. So those are two areas that I think we talk a lot about. You know, that again, that behavioral and social change dimension, as well as an inequality and kind of social justice perspective. Jason, do you want to take the biology piece?
Yeah. So in the biology courses, in the more biology leaning kind of environmental studies courses, we tend to really focus on ecosystem services. And since I haven't actually taught any of those yet, I'll let Reisner jump in and correct me when I screw this part up. But a lot of it is the different levels of provisioning services, and I can't remember the other ones, but it's all very kind of ecology based. And it really does, at least at the 100 level, it's just introducing the different ways that the environment functions and works. So a lot of nutrient cycling, the use of resources and how those different resources are regenerated in a sustainable way. In the one course that I'm teaching this semester in conservation biology, we're basically going through and discussing all the different aspects of what conservation biology is. It's such a broad, huge topic. To spend 14 weeks on it is actually really not enough in many respects because it's so broad. But we go everything from talking about how do you value biodiversity, what is biodiversity, how do you measure biodiversity, what are the different impacts, whether you're in a terrestrial system. And so we're thinking about forests versus, say, marine systems versus freshwater systems. And we're looking at all kind of at a biodiversity lens is the way that I play that. And then also my course is also part of our general education curriculum. And so students taking my course earn gen ed credit on the value system thinking. And so we spend a lot of time talking about how do your personal values actually influence a lot of the decisions you're making, and how your decisions really do matter even at an individual level. And so basically taking a more applied science route to how we think about you functioning in a biodiversity framework.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit it, Jason. Those are the big things. I will say that right now, kind of the intermediate level core course is focused on climate change and sustainable energy. So right now, that's kind of the focus of that course, probably for the foreseeable future. So what next question was kind of what are the most common concentrations for students? So I'll focus on, what are the most common double majors? And they're growing in that diversity as we've grown. We've had quite a few double majors, besides the traditional ones I would say they used to be biology and geography were the doubles. Now we're seeing a fair number of geology double majors, sociology, anthropology, communication studies, history, business administration. So we're seeing a growing political science. So we're seeing a growing kind of breadth of double majors. In terms of the areas, if you wanted to concentrate your 4 electives, they can really run the gamut. We'll have some students really focus on kind of the GIS, geospatial piece. We'll have other students who will very much focus on environmental or social anthropology. So it's really varied depending on your interest. And if you don't have a strong area of concentration, you have the flexibility to kind of to broaden your perspective a little bit through those electives as well. If you had a lot of times some of the majors, if it's ones like geology, which I call that a large footprint major, where doing a environmental studies and geology major is going to take a lot of your available credits, then oftentimes your concentration courses are in geology, or for the most part, just so you can pull off the double major. So hopefully that gives you a little perspective on, I would say the only other major on campus, we've had pre-physics do it, pre-engineering and physics. I think education would be a challenge to do education and environmental studies. It could be done if you knew as a first year that's what you wanted to do. I think the education major's got a big footprint. It could probably be done, but I don't know if we've ever had anyone do that one. Lots of Spanish and double majors and almost any of the language. We have 2 with Japanese right now, and creative writing and environmental studies. So pretty flexible in terms of what your other area of concentration is.
I think for the education majors, I think I'm more familiar with them doing like an environmental studies minor, or they pick up a minor or 2, because the state of Illinois requirements for the education majors are pretty intense in terms of the coursework, and with the having to do student teaching as part of their capstone experience, that doesn't leave the ed majors a lot of flexibility. And so most of the ones that I know that are teaching biology majors, they tend to do like an environmental studies minor, or they just take classes in the environmental studies curriculum because they just want the experience and they want to be able to demonstrate to their future schools that, look, I've had coursework in these different areas, which that's also perfectly acceptable. And I work with a lot of my advisees that say, a lot of my advisees really like art. And so they really want to take as many different art classes as possible. But the art classes can be somewhat difficult to schedule because they have like studio time. And if you're trying to schedule studio time and you're taking a bunch of biology classes that have lab times and trying to make those fit, and I'm always telling them, don't worry about, whether you get that minor per se. If you love this, just take a bunch of classes in that and figure out how to do that.
So we've talked about a variety of ways in which our students really double major, have really diverse interests, and yet I'm still going to add one more simply because it's really timely, and a lot of my students right now have been talking about it, but a double major with public health. So we do have a really good public health major here on campus, and given how timely it is, there are clearly connections between the ways in which we treat our environment and the ecosystem services and the ways in which we're going to be more or less prone to disease outbreaks, to viral outbreaks, and to the kinds of pandemics that we're seeing now. So we do see students who are also interested in the public health dimension and those connections between environmental and public health.
And one of the things, just to follow up on Sarah's, is the public health connection. We did some predictive modeling in GIS to look at potential lead exposure risks from paint for children in one of the counties in the Quad City region. And all those crazy graphs you're seeing for the coronavirus that are predicting the spread, those are predictive modeling in GIS, which takes into account the cool thing about GIS, if you don't know it, is regardless of what field you're in, we have a board of trustees who use GIS to figure out where to put noodles stores. If you know noodles, he used it to look as a marketing way, where should they position their noodles stores. So, but from a public health perspective, you can lay layers of data on top of one another and then look at them simultaneously, which is really powerful from an interdisciplinary perspective. So that's a cool other way you can do it. What other questions do you guys have? I'm trying to look at the chat. That we have anything about Augustana or the QC region?
Can you minor in biology?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Very easy to do. The main thing, like, as you're thinking about majors and minors, probably the biggest difference is that in a minor, you would not do the senior inquiry capstone experience. And so you take usually a slightly fewer number of courses, and then you obviously wouldn't do the capstone experience in a minor. So a lot of majors, if you're majoring, that usually means you're doing a capstone. In the biology department, for instance, because we're huge, we actually allow our double majors and triple majors to actually do their capstone experience in their other departments, and then they just pick up an additional biology elective. In environmental studies, we're a little more stingy because we really want you to get this on the ground community partner experience. That's like the project-based learning. That is kind of our claim to fame, really, is getting you that kind of experience. So we want you in our capstone so you can get that culminating experience. So in terms of biology, we're always like, fine, go do environmental studies and just pick up another biology class and we'll be happy with that. So,
okay.
And some departments do that, some departments don't.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
And I'll ask one question. I always get this a lot, so I like to, for myself, just know from these academic departments, but I'm sure this might apply to some of our students since we have juniors and admitted seniors. If you have a student who is taking any type of like dual enrollment credit, how do you all handle if they're thinking about, an AP science or biology course or something of that nature? Do you all take that credit, or how do you kind of address that with students bringing those types of credits in?
Yeah, so the AP Environmental Science credit often will come in as Environmental Studies 100. We've done that. And if you have one of the more rarer AP classes, often it'll come in as one of the 4 electives. So most likely it would come in for Environmental Studies 100, which is the ecological piece. So that's where it most likely is going to come in. But good question.
Yeah, in biology, we tend to, if we accept AP, which we have very few students that actually come in with biology AP, because honestly, the exam is so expensive, and most of our students want to take the diversity of courses we offer in biology, so it doesn't really help them to do the exam per se. Having the AP coursework is actually more useful to them versus paying the money for the exam.
We had a question on environmental systems and societies. We've never had a student come in with that AP credit, but I'm sure it would potentially count towards 100 or 101. So we probably have to look at, we've never had a student try to bring it in, but bring it in. We'll figure out where it goes. So we're pretty flexible on that level. So. Good question. Okay. What else do you have? Anything about Augustana broader? You've got a new person, and Jason's been here a little longer than me, and I'm kind of in between.
So I know we have about 5 minutes left, so we're actually almost to the end of our time. And I know a couple of students on here have been on a couple of them. So they might have like asked out all of your Augie questions, which is totally cool. Like you're getting all your stuff answered. But I think, I don't know, has this been helpful for you all? Hopefully current or students. Yeah. Okay. You're like, yeah, sure. Okay, cool.
And I saw that Christian put in our profile pages. I mean, you should always feel welcome to reach out and contact any of us via email. If we can't figure out the answer, we definitely know where to find it. And so we can definitely put the calls out to our colleagues in the various programs and things if it's something we can't answer off the top of our heads. So, and like all of you with all the distance and stay-at-home measures that we're all experiencing right now, we're on our email quite a bit. So we're usually pretty quick to respond.
Yeah, feel free to send us an email. We'll respond quick. We know you guys are all trying to make a decision here in the next 60 days. Some of you that are graduating seniors. So shoot us an email. We'll respond quick. So.
And for those of you that have already committed to coming to Augustana, or you're basically, if you've put a tuition deposit and everything down, having a major chosen immediately doesn't, I mean, that's great and that's fine and we will totally work with you. But you should take that first year to explore and figure out those types of classes and things that you get really excited about, because quite honestly, any parents in the room, this will be the only time you get to do anything for fun. Grad school is so channelized and narrow-eyed and everything else. It's like I'm always pushing my advisees, please go take, they'll talk about either this professor or this topic that really interests them. And I'm always like, go take a class, because you can actually do that while you're an undergrad. So use that to actually have fun. You can actually do it as an undergrad. So if you don't really know about a major, your first year is time for you to explore, meet faculty, talk to other students, and really figure it out. We actually don't really encourage people to declare until spring of their first year. But if you know exactly what you want to do, I was that way. I declared a botany major as soon as I could when I started my undergrad, but I was just weird that way. So.
Awesome. That is excellent advice. I would second all of that. Definitely do not, there's like 200 things to be stressed out about just today, I'm sure, because like there's a pandemic. So don't be stressed out about this for sure. So I think this has been really awesome. We'll go ahead and wrap up because there is a second session happening right after this. I'm going to give them a little time. So we really thank you three for joining us today, providing all of this information. I'm feeling really good about my reusable straw that I purchased last week, trying to help the environment. So that's cool. And I hope that, students will reach out. So for sure, if you have any questions, again, grab that information really quickly out of the chat box. And we thank you all for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome. Y'all have a good week.